of you, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to try to navigate this document on my monitor where my camera is. I also have some notes. You know, I've put together some of the questions and the the interesting comments to adjudicate. So those will be down on my monitor where the camera is. And so if someone does type something in the chat, I could really use some help, please, to let me know. Well, I'll try to put it on my third monitor to let me know if someone has a question. It's really hard to keep up with all of that at once.
This is Dave. I'll monitor the chat.
Thank you so much. Cool. So for the moment, I will turn off my camera and wait. We have 2 more minutes till 12 noon. So we can wait, and I'll let a few more people join. Thank you. Okay, so it is 12 noon. And I do see people, a lot of people are starting to join right now. So Happy New Year to everyone, and welcome to the January Lunch and Learn sessions to continue the Agile Champion series with CPM. My name is Andrea Nybert, and I am the NDIA IPMD Agile Committee Chair. And one activity that we have been working for a couple of years now was to refresh our existing guide. We're up to version 1.4, and we have had some great great discussions to make these updates. I have 252. I've processed 252 comments, and I'm down to just a few that I'd like to discuss with you guys as well. And the purpose of this Lunch and Learn is twofold. One, it's to help the Agile Committee, get more input to the guide on some of the more vague topics and concepts that we have in here. And it's also to share with you guys the process that we go to navigate. It's great to pontificate And when it comes right down to it, not only do we have to pontificate, we have to put those words on writing for others to consume. So hopefully you'll learn some things as well. So it looks like we're stabilizing. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive in. Dave Smith will be monitoring the chat and getting my attention. At some point when I open it up for a discussion, feel free to go off of mute, and we'll just talk through these different topics that I want to cover. So the first topic is, we received many comments, many feedback between the IPMD board, industry, and government about the term release. So would you guys share with me what comes to mind when you hear the word release? And we'll sort of time box it, maybe give 3 to 5 minutes for folks to share their thoughts, please, on what comes to mind when you hear the word release in an Agile context.
Say, Andrea, I've got a put on that. This is Gordon Kranz. When I think of release, I think of something that is usable to the end customer, right? Release is tied to customer objectives, meeting customer objectives, and usable to the customer, as opposed to there are sometimes internal deliveries to help facilitate the team getting their work done. Low-level stuff that the customer doesn't necessarily care about, but it needs to happen in order to have the higher level capabilities or things that the user is visible, that it's visible to the user. So customer focused, I guess, is the summary.
And Gordon, do you have a common name for those internal delays?
Well, I've heard some of the Agilists call them deployments, but we don't like that because military deployments are different. Other than that, I've heard it referred to as infrastructure, features or capabilities, meaning that they're how your network might work, or, what the protocols of something are. User doesn't care. They just care that you get the end message from here to here, that kind of thing. So not anything standard, no, unfortunately.
Okay, anyone else?
Andrea, Dave Smith. Release to test is a term we use. So that's not necessarily fully integrated and working, but it is simply code and subsystem test complete and released to test. So that might be another scenario where we say release to something or somebody.
Cool. Anyone else? And you can also type in the chat if you can't seem to get off mute.
So Dave, let me ask a question about that. So it one way to interpret that, and I'm just trying to poke at it a little bit, but so I agree. Release to test is a phase of a release as opposed to release to the user. But would you think that release to test, the things that are being tested are still those user-focused features and capabilities?
They are, but they're immature.
Okay.
They're immature at that point.
So it's phasing. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Release always has to be followed by a parens or dash or something, right? Always, every time.
Yes. That makes sense. Yeah, I agree.
I like that. Always has a following descriptor word, if you will.
As a suffix or something. We do have a couple of comments that are coming in, which is good. Josh Callahan says, when I hear release, I think delivering a piece of value to a user. So what Gordon said. Glenn Allenman says from the Agile Academy definition of release is a release in Agile refers to the final delivery of software package after the completion of multiple iterations or sprints, meaning after integrated test is done and all that. So final software is the key for the Academy, Agile Academy definition. But I still say, you know, you can have a standard definition, but people are always going to say release. The handoff is a term you could use, but maybe if we just get in the habit of saying release too and follow it up with something, we could all be correct all the time.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. But I would still try to constrain, you know, so for example, if the internal teams are delivering things that are just useful to the internal team, you know, again, the low level infrastructure, not visible, would you still call those releases, but call them internal releases or something? Or would you call it something different?
I think an internal release is cool, but it begs the question of to who. So maybe maybe from a canned standard operating perspective, when we say release, there's a consumer. Just name who the consumer is. So when I release to integrated test, because I didn't say integrated, did I? I said test before. And the assumption is that it's integrated test, but maybe we just always name the successor user rather than something else that state the user. Yeah.
So, for example, you would say release internal or release something like that. You know, or,
yeah, external could still be confusing if you're with another company and you're jointly developing software. You might be externally releasing it, but it's still immature. So maybe the best approach is just be clear and try not to be too wordy, but just put the suffix of who it's exactly going to. So end user, we all know end user. We know who that is. They're on the ground or in the air or under the water.
Okay, and so I kind of want to bring this back to the guide now, but I did happen to see, so if you see me looking away, I am trying to read the chat and navigate on 3 different screens. So I do see the comment, what if it's not producing software? Yes, I agree. Agile can be used for other types of deliverables. So I don't necessarily want to answer that question directly. Let me bring it back to the guide for now. And in particular, would you guys accept that release is a concept and a generic reference? And let me just pause there for a minute. It's a concept and a generic reference. Each program will have a specific definition of a release that is documented in the Agile implementation plan. And then I'd like to end it, so a lot of times when we're updating this guide, again, it's the pontification that you heard between Gordon and Dave, and then the comments in the chat were perfectly timed. And then now we have to make a commitment. So I think it would be value added to the guide to say, assume the term release is followed by 2. Clarify for clarification of the purpose of the release. Clarification for the purpose I'll just leave it at that for now, for its purpose.
That works. You don't have to say, you don't have to say user. That's okay, because the purpose will automatically point to, oh, that's the group that needs it. The purpose, the process, the step.
So if we were and we took a lot of time, I don't want to scroll too much here, but we took a lot of time in the definitions appendix to outline all of that. Gordon and I were coordinating with the multiple other system engineers. Gordon and I also cross-referenced with the NDIA ADAPT and system engineering divisions. I also pulled in, I'd worked with a subset of the SE division with a CSM predictive measures guide. So we have expanded our definition of release in the definitions appendix to be much more broad. So back to Doug's question, if you understand that release is a concept and a general reference, and we always say release to, could we apply that to other types of deliverables? Release a report, release a, I don't know, I'm stretching here.
Release prototype hardware, release.
Correct.
Absolutely. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Okay. So, big picture then, I think these clarifications that we just wrote in the guide adds clarity, and we'll address multiple comments. Any last thoughts, any rebuts? And I personally take silence as we're good. So if you don't speak up, note you're good.
Hi, this is Suzette. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, this has always been a very difficult word to define and what it means and different connotations. So I can definitely empathize with the challenge here. And just as I keep reading it and thinking of different contexts, but I think the important thing is that we define what we mean here, regardless of what the actual words are, is what's really important, is to have that clear definition, because release planning in itself means so many different things. Release means so many different things. And I just think we just got to define it and keep referring people back to a definition that we can agree to. Because I do personally struggle with the word release, because as soon as we say that word, I've got at least three different scenarios in mind, right? It's just hard.
Yes, it is. And for the schedulers, EVM analysts who may be on the call, I think it's very appropriate, like to Suzette's point, and in Suzette's role, she may be helping a program define what that is. So just as a point of reference, it's very fair to ask when a program uses the word release, okay, great. Show me how it's documented in that Agile implementation plan, your PMP. The point is, it really should be documented for everyone on the program to adapt and use those same common terms. So our goal of the guide is not to define all of the potential scenarios. My objective with the guide is to explain this concept enough so you have the reach back and the information. Okay, everyone's saying release. I don't know what it means. What are they releasing to? then you can get to wherever a program has documented that and learn for yourself so you can adapt to the language. So do you believe that this footnote 3 helps you get to that point? Okay, and so, again, feel free to read the definition. Please send me an email if you have any additional thoughts after this within the next day or so. I'm sure this is a lot to absorb. Okay, that release can be a type of deliverable. So look away if you have scrolling problems, or maybe I'll just try to jump here through the table of contents.
This is aerospace. We've all been through spin training, right? So we're good.
Oh, don't bring the word spin into it, please. So I'm just rereading our definition here. So working software, deliverable, solution, or product. Okay, thank you, Doug. I appreciate that. Folding in the deliverable. So that comment of a big R versus a little r. All of the definitions I've worked, to me, that feels like a more informal discussion point. And I don't know, what do you guys think about that? Is that worth noting in this definition and in this guide that it may be common to refer to a release as a big R or a little r? I kind of think that's more informal.
Yeah, when I think of big R versus little r, usually that term historically is, the system requirements that are visible to the user versus derived requirements that are necessary for lower level components to make the big R's happen. So there's possibly some way you could use that, but I'm not sure I'm fond of using similar terminology that we've used for 30 years in the new way. You know what I'm saying? I think the best way to transition forward is to try to update the language a little bit so that we're not cross-translating between what we meant years ago and what we mean today.
Right. Okay. Very good. And again, I appreciate every suggestion, and some of the folks on this call who have worked with me when we were literally like in the throes of this. Yeah, this is exactly how the discussion goes, and it's great to hear every comment. So I'm going to move on. I want to make sure I get a couple more examples in here. Here's a quick one I think we can discuss. When we originally published this guide, there were the words of Agile hierarchy. And Agile hierarchy was assumed to mean some combination, whatever your program uses, epic, capability, feature, story, whatever you've defined for your program. Some of the feedback I've been getting is that users would prefer to see the word product or scope hierarchy. And in the few conversations I have had, I'd like to go with product hierarchy. So with this release 4.1, you will see the word product hierarchy everywhere. And again, it still states that that product hierarchy should be defined, by your program. And I can jump up to figure 1.1 and look away if the scrolling bothers you, please. So, here it says Agile product and time hierarchy. Right here, where I just say product and time hierarchies, this used to say, I don't know, somewhere down in here, it used to say, the Agile hierarchy. So any problems with changing that holistically? I think it adds a lot of value.
So just a question, and I don't even know if anyway, it's just a question. Do we need to say Agile product, or is it just product? I don't know. It's just, like I said, I don't even know if I have a preference either way. It's just something that came to my mind when I read the title.
Sounds great. I agree. And it's funny, Suzette, like things like that occur, after you relook at it. So that sounds perfect, against the words, how I was trying to describe to you this particular change.
Yeah, I think
okay.
It's a nice improvement.
Yeah, and the comments that I got back and the interpretations and the decision to take out one word like that, I didn't realize how powerful the subtlety of the words have been in this guide. It was amazing across 52 comments, how many different assumptions people can walk away with. So do not underestimate the power of changing that, any particular subtle word. And so now everyone on this call, we know going forward, we may be aligning. I'd say this is one of our most favorite figures. If I can remember where it is. Again, I'm scrolling. This is one of our, most famous figures. And when you go to align the EVM hierarchy with the product hierarchy, again, this is an activity that you will want to do on your programs, and we can all consistently state that this is what we do with our programs. We align the appropriate product hierarchy with the EVM hierarchy. And so that leads me to another comment. The comment was about not wanting to commit to a capability at the control account level. And the comment went further to say that we may have multiple capabilities, or capabilities may have multiple control accounts, especially when CLINs are involved. And so my question to all of you is, first of all, I understand how important CLINs are to the contract and to manage the program. But within my EVM training, CLIN to me is basically a funding mechanism. And I know that within our EVM cost engines, I could set up within that engine a reporting level to be a CLIN, a control account to be a CLIN, or I can even set up a work package code field to equate to a CLIN. So to me, I don't want to complicate this EVM hierarchy with CLIN, because CLINs are so specific and there's multiple ways to report by CLIN without having to force the CLIN as a control account. So my intent with this guide was to ask, can you accept this alignment as a sample, knowing that every program will adjust this accordingly? And if it were up to me, like in my PMP or maybe an Agile and EVM program procedure, I would actually show this alignment. Use this for surveillance to explain to the external auditors, how all of these things fit. So what do you guys think? Do you accept this as a sample, or must we expand the writing to include CLIN?
So Andrea, just to address your question, I don't know that I personally have a preference. So I would kind of defer to the team, the rest of the team, of what their thoughts are.
Yeah, the more specific you get, then, people, start to begin to say, well, what are all the other versions? I mean, your philosophy you described earlier, that you can't possibly put down every possibility of, answer in here. I think it's to try to figure out how to keep it at a higher level and say, hey, this is just a sample, I think is a way to go.
And for some of the folks, who haven't been part of the Agile committee, are you able to apply this to your programs?
Don't you have to say something somewhere about CLINs? Do you say something somewhere about CLINs? Because contracts tends to be kind of dominant, and that's the way they work without considering EVM?
No. There is, well, and let me just double check. To me, CLIN is not necessarily an EVM thing. It's a contractual funding thing. And then there are choices. I mean, I don't think, is CLIN even in? Yeah, if there's no matches in here, is CLIN even in 748? I don't think it is.
Yeah, no, it's.
Yeah, that
Cool.
I'm concerned that it's not mentioned somewhere as to what it is, what its purpose is versus what we do in EVM.
The purpose of a CLIN, and I would
vice EVM.
I would default back to your corporate EVM training and have that discussion, with one of your EVM focal points. The one
Where
thing
I've seen,
okay.
I was going to offer up what I think CLIN. I think the reason that CLINs are used by the customers is they're maybe on a larger effort. There might be one CLIN where they want to try something new, or there might be a particularly risky investment by the customer that requires different tracking and reporting, and so they establish a different CLIN. There may be a reward structure or fee tied specifically to that CLIN. And you don't have to, you can do all those things without separate CLINs. Sometimes they want a specific POP placed on a certain subset of work. So that's another thing that drives us to have CLINs. But to just remind ourselves, if you don't deal with CLINs and you just had a single contract for an effort, it is possible to have agreements that you sign up to that are not via a CLIN. It's just to kind of, I'm not a fan of them because a lot of times low-level contractual requirements get pigeonholed and siloed with CLINs, and that's just my take on it.
I'm just saying the reality is that we're dealing with contractual offices that don't necessarily plan according to what the EVM directions are.
I guess I'm a little confused. This is Gordon again. The contract line item is got some very specific contract definitions. It's not related to EVM. People choose to try to relate EVM with CLINs, and in some cases it works, in some cases it doesn't. I just would avoid trying to say that EVM and CLIN are really related, other than
what I'm
when people
saying is
choose to.
maybe there needs to be a statement somewhere that how CLINs are not related to EVM.
Oh, I see. Because you're seeing that happen out in the real world.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, because I suspect it's problematic usually.
I've seen where CLIN structure can drive additional structural cost structure. There's
Right.
more, right? There's more structure because you've got CLIN. So you had a program. Well, now you've got to delineate it and set up different cost accounting structures by CLIN. So it drives a lot more level of effort or program support, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then some CLINs are firm fixed price versus cost plus. And so that kind of mixes in what you track in EVM and what you don't.
Yeah, and I would think, and I'm reading some of these comments as well, I would think within your company, within the EVM and project finance chain of command, they would understand how to advise on any particulars.
So question, Andrea, doesn't NDIA IPMD have a supplement on contracting and EVM where something like that would be clarified?
Yes, and they just released their first guide. Elizabeth Schuler is the committee chair for the contracts group.
Because that's where this kind of thing should be documented.
Yeah, if you're going to be talking about EVM and contracts in the same document, you would bring up CLIN there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and our contract section in this guide, and just to point out, we have added a disclaimer. If you're interpreting this guide and you run into a question that isn't specifically answered, maybe coordinate with your Agile training and with your company and your EVM training resources. This guide cannot. Oh my goodness, how many pages it would be if we tried to fold in all of that training as well. Yeah, we definitely assume that folks have a general understanding of Agile. One thing we did learn at our planning meeting for 2023, one of the committee members has been researching. There are well over 100 different Agile methodologies. And when she aligned the components of all of them, there's apparently like 85% overlap. So the purpose of this guide is to get you started with that 85% overlap. So then you can dive into, the various nuances, for that last 15%. And if I don't recognize the voice who was asking the questions, but if anyone wants Elizabeth's contact information, please just type in the chat and I'll get you in touch with Elizabeth. You can also Google NDIA IPMD Contracts Committee and her name should appear and email and phone number should appear when you Google that. Okay. So I have two last things that I would like to discuss with you guys. Both are rather large, so let's do a pick. One comment came back about the fixed price comments, and I'm going to jump back over to the PDF that was sent out on lines. And again, look away if you don't like the scrolling. Lines 966. So this discussion right here about fixed price. And the comment had to do, there was another comment earlier as well. Oh, here it is. Under an Agile fixed price contract, the buyer knows exactly how much, dot, dot, dot. And the comment was that to expand this short paragraph to cover all of the various types of Agile development scenarios, cases, and contract types. I think that's too big for this guide, at the moment. And then I have some sub bullets that we could spend our last 20 minutes talking about. The second topic is that some of the comments coming in, the way they are written, it looks like they're focusing on some of our pre-Agile thinking, and that within government contracting, there are very prescriptive requirements. There's a SAL, and the mindset, this committee, we are not reaching folks with the mindset that Agile is more focused on a target product or objective. Maybe there should be a SU, not a SAL. So, what would you like to talk about? The prescriptive requirements or the concept of fixed price in Agile?
What would the purpose of being described, fixed price in Agile? When I hear people talk about that, they're talking about procuring teams and not relating it to scope. To just, I'm going to buy a team of experts and I'm going to go do something. I'm not. What's the relationship we're trying to form?
So that is what the reader had. Okay, so someone can't see. So I am sharing my screen. Can some of you see this PDF?
We see the black box. It's just sharing applications only.
Huh. So that could be your firewall. So the PDF that I'm sharing was the PDF that was emailed. Ooh, when was it? Back in November, with the comments that were due December 9th. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, you know what? It did stop sharing. That's what you meant by black box, Dave. At one point, I was sharing. Huh. Daryl, did you have to give me specific access again, maybe?
No, you do have full access. If you can you restart your sharing?
There's no button anymore for me to do that. I did have a button.
Yeah, do you have the file, the review due on 9 December? Is that the file you have open?
Yes, that is the PDF file that I have open.
Okay, stand by.
Oh yeah, maybe Dave can share. So anyway, back to Gordon's question. So Gordon, I agree that's the right assumption to potentially take away. I'm getting ready to start a fixed price CLIN on a contract, and we still have a product hierarchy. We agreed to take on the risk of delivering product. To deliver product within a fixed price arrangement. So we do plan to show S&P and the schedule variance, per that product hierarchy. So Dave, I'm down on row 966, please.
Yeah, I bet we could just go to 966. That would be pretty cool. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, again, the question is, it is purposeful within this guide to communicate contracting considerations. And my question is, I think it's too late to release version 1.4 to expand this section. I am changing these words. I think these words are just, these words are just, they're not quite right. The buyer does not know exactly how much it will cost. What they should be able to do is produce some sort of a very clear objective for the seller to bid on. So I have changed these words around. I agree these words aren't quite right. The buyer is responsible to clearly articulate the objective, well enough for the buyer to bid, a total fixed price cost and a firm schedule. So those words I am changing around for this release. Would you guys like to see a product coming out of 2023 where we do have different types of Agile development scenarios, cases, and contract types? And I could work with Elizabeth to see how our two committees would like to take that on.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, in other forums that I'm having Agile discussions, it almost always one of the major considerations is what type of work is it, and you would approach Agile and how you track it and all that stuff differently depending on the scope. So I think there are a handful of things that could be looked at. For example, an enterprise system, where you actually have a given application and all you're doing is configuring it for a user, is likely way different than a space system or a missile. The Intel community, has existing software that runs on workstations that they're just updating to exploit, additional data and that kind of thing. Because in some cases you can use teams and fixed price, just buy a team of Intel experts, but in some cases you can't, right? I mean, it's, but I think defining a handful of different work scope types, and then trying to identify how you manage those different types, from an Agile or EV or non-EV perspective, makes a lot of sense.
I'm typing. Okay, so my takeaway is that we will add to our 2023 activities, possibly a white paper that defines a handful of different types of implementations and contract types, and recommend an appropriate program management approach. And the word that keeps coming to mind is the word hybrid. And so I've also noted, in these different scenarios, if you're buying a team versus defining objectives for a product, there may only be certain principles out of the Agile principles that you would use when you go to execute that contract. So I think, Gordon, as well, this is opening up the whole idea of a hybrid approach, and yep. What does that mean, and which principles do you pull?
Yeah, I agree.
Any other thoughts? I mean, if not, if that was this simple and those are the thoughts for now, Yeah, I would just like to get a poll of what people are seeing out there with regard to how prescriptive the requirements are coming across. So any other last fixed price thoughts? Okay, so we will add that to one of our activities, and I would love it to see some of you on the call, volunteering to help us work that activity, please. Okay, the last topic. As I mentioned, some of the comments that came in, they were written that there has been no mindset shift at all within the acquisition, within the thinking of how that particular company and person is viewing a contract that wants to execute in an agile situation. So are you guys, what is the mind shift that you are thinking? Are the customers that you're working with, is their acquisition process evolving? I know there's a lot of things coming out of DAU and OSD. I think we're still about a year away from having a software color of money. So I do know that there are huge shifts within the acquisition community and in particular within the DoD to shift that mindset. So is that reaching any of you? That your programs or your RFPs or the contracts awarded are shifting to focus on a target product or objective? Yeah, and maybe you just don't know, maybe you're just not hearing anything out there. So let me ask that question a different way. In execution, are any of you having difficulty managing that contractual change? For example, some contracts officers will think that every single requirement change equates to an ECP, or maybe they expect to see a consideration to reduce the contract value if a requirement is removed. How are any of you evolving and changing? Are you truly managing those requirements in a way that you note if something can be officially removed, but it's not changing the contract value because you found a better one, so those two offset? How has your approach to managing that contractual change evolved now that you've been executing in an agile environment? Any thoughts?
Doesn't it depend on where you set your baseline? How you set your baseline to what criteria?
And that is part of it. And
you may not have a baseline, for example, that is set based on requirements. You might have, a product where the requirements can shift back and forth, sort of slosh around.
yes. And are you seeing your newer contracts that are they adapting that way to allow for that flexibility?
I don't. My issue is that I don't think our contracts are taking that kind of earned value management, if you will, tracking into account. So I can't really answer that. This is Susan Barton, by the way.
And if I'm asking the wrong question, maybe someone can help me out, or maybe this just isn't an issue. Maybe the root of these comments come from, the individual adapting the mindset, and our customers, maybe they are adapting that. And I guess here's one more way I can try to ask the question. From a system engineering perspective and the Agile tools, the more mature ones will tie the actual acceptance criteria and maybe the test stories that they have through a MBSE, some sort of trace model, that when a story or the test is accepted, that's where you get your requirements. That's your requirements sell-off. And if that's working well, then maybe with your customer, you're managing that at the Agile level, and it doesn't ever hit that contractual requirements management level. I don't know if that helps try to get to what I'm trying to discuss here.
I think there's some distinction, though, between contractual management and your Agile management. There's this, there's not necessarily a dependency.
Okay. So by the lack of comments, and I appreciate that, Susan, clarifying, I agree. There's a distinction, between the two levels of managing that change. So I'm just going to move forward then and reject some of those comments. Again, the whole purpose of the guide is to help evolve that mindset and focused on that product and the objective. So I'm gonna, reject those comments and just move forward. I think we're good there. So those were the 5 examples I had to go over with you. In the last 5 minutes, are there any general questions? Are there any clarifications that any one of you would like to bring up for the rest of us, please? If not, does that mean we're 100% good to go? The guide's perfect? Anyone?
Yes.
And I know it's not, and I know as we all learn more, we will continue to tweak words. So no other confusing, clarifying questions from anyone? So if not, we can go ahead and wrap up. And I appreciate, I have definitely satisfied my goals to, make sure I update the guide for these 5 things. And we will go ahead and add another activity to be worked in 2023. And I am very sincere. If you'd like to join the Agile committee and help us complete these things, would love to have you. You can email me directly. If you can't find my email, go ahead and Google NDIA IPMD Agile Committee, and all of my contact information will be there. And the one last question I'll ask you guys, for the February Lunch and Learn topics, do any of you have any particular topics you would like to cover? And I'll give you a minute to type something in the chat. We are holding these on the 3rd Thursday of every month. We will take a break in the heavy vacation summer months, and then again in December. So we can plan on 10 meetings a year. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. So again, I will, give you back a few minutes to transition to your 1 o'clock meetings. Oh, there we go. Risk management. Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, risk management. We even have an activity to document something for risk management. So that would be, yeah.
So another thing Glenn put in there was the capabilities-based planning. And that's come up in some of my system engineering discussions. In fact, one guy even asserted that we need to teach, JROC level users how to write capabilities better, that lend themselves easier to agile implementation. But I think that is an important topic, the capabilities-based planning, and what does it mean? How is it different, in agile and that kind of thing?
Yeah, Gordon, this is Glenn. I think I would like to participate in that because we start with the RAND document all the time about capabilities. Mm-hmm. And we usually those projects fail, or at least when we go to fix them, is because they didn't know what they were going to do with this stuff when they got it done. Right. Which is the failure of capability. And that's actually flowed down from the AT&L. So.
Yep.
On the risk category, I'd like to associate or try to glue blockers, the term blockers, with issues. So when we talk about risks, issues, and opportunities, to me, a blocker is an issue, and then it's like, well, they're kind of the same, but two different management processes. So if we get on that topic, that could be a sub nugget to discuss.
Excellent. And, Suzette, heads up when we talk about, co-working between IPMD and ADAPT and SE, definitely that capabilities-based planning. I think that's an additional topic for, multiple divisions to work on. So yes, I'm very pleased to see that last year and this year, we truly are collaborating with multiple divisions now, and it is very exciting. So thank you for your time. If ever you think of any other topics, I will keep adding it to the list, and we will keep these, third Thursday discussions going. Love to hear